All right, good morning and welcome to Monday morning. It is August the 16th today. We are going to be going through James and John and Peter, the letters they wrote, or at least some. Hard to get through all those in just 1 week period. We started off with James yesterday. We're going to be with James again. This James, there's a couple of James. There was an early leader in the church. There was one who was beheaded. This James is an early leader in the church. He was the brother of Jesus, who wasn't a believer in Jesus as the Messiah until after the resurrection. Couldn't deny what he'd seen. And so he writes this letter with his name on it. Not written to any particular church. That's a hallmark of these letters. Not written to any one particular church, but to groups of believers. And as far as chronology goes, actually the first letter written, it's believed, of the scriptures we find in the New Testament. Though the suggested reading is James chapter 2, verses 14 through 26. Today's devotion is entitled Faith and Works. Faith and Works. James 2:14. What good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? It is well known that James and Paul are supposed to have disagreed with one another on the subject of justification, that is to say, on how sinners can become accepted and pronounced righteous in the sight of God. Further, on account of this apparent theological discord, Luther excluded James's letter from his New Testament canon, calling it a letter of straw. Certainly, there is an apparent discrepancy between these two apostles, for Paul taught that a man is justified by faith apart from observing the law, Romans 3:28. Whereas James wrote, you see that a person is justified by what he does and not by faith alone, James 2:24. Moreover, both apostles claimed Abraham as their champion. But the discrepancy is more imaginary than real. Paul and James had a different ministry, but not a different message. They proclaimed the same gospel, but with a different emphasis. The reason for this different emphasis is that they were opposing different false teachers. Paul's opponents were Jewish legalists or Judaizers who taught that justification is by works done in obedience to the law. James's opponents, however, were Jewish intellectualizers who taught that justification is by faith, meaning a barren orthodoxy. To the Judaizers, Paul insisted that justification is not by works but by faith. To the intellectualizers, James insisted that justification is not by orthodox faith, which the demons also possess and shudder, but by a faith that works. There's the difference. A faith that works. Both apostles clarified the nature of authentic faith, namely that it is a living faith that works. I will show you my faith by my works, wrote James chapter 2, verse 18. Faith working through love, wrote Paul, Galatians 5:6. We cannot be saved by our works, yet we cannot be saved without them. The place of works is not to earn salvation, but to evidence it. Not to procure salvation, but to prove it. Thus, both apostles taught that an authentic faith works. But Paul emphasized the faith that issues in works, whereas James emphasized the works that issue from faith. Both would agree that faith without works is dead. That's a cart and horse kind of problem the church has had since the beginning. That's why Paul and James both feel the need to write about it. But yet still, so many think that just saying they believe the right things, yes, I believe in God, yes, I believe in Jesus, that's all that matters. James would say, where's the proof? Where's the proof? If you really believe, then your life has to reflect it. It has to be seen in your life, in your works, in your choices, in your words, in your priorities. Too many people think just because they lay claim to an orthodox belief system that they're good to go. But until they put faith in it, real faith in it, that changes their life, that gives evidence of a rebirth and the life then being lived, the works emanating from that, can be held up as proof, then they're not saved and they're not okay. James mentions even the devil and his angels believe this truth. They know that this truth is true, and yet it has done them no good. It has done them no good. Jesus gives evidence of those kind of people who comes and look at all we've done, Jesus. We've done so many great works. And he says, I never knew you. You never came into relationship with me. You set on your own course to do your own works, thinking you justified yourself through that. There's only one way to be justified before God, and that's through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Putting entirely your faith in him, and then allowing that new birth to begin in you and changing you as to why you do those things and how you do those things. Oh, they were good works before, but they weren't saving you. Now you get saved, and then the works emanate. And I agree. Paul and James would agree with that assessment. Seek the Lord. Ask him what he says. Jeremiah the prophet says we have deceitful and deceptive hearts. Who can know them? Well, the Lord and the Holy Spirit can know them. Real Christian brothers and sisters around you may have noticed. They're just afraid to say anything. Don't think you're going to be saved by works, not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy he saved us. That's where it begins. That's where it begins. Blessings to you today on this Monday. Live for Jesus.